Okay, in this section we're going to dig into our maps, and there's quite a bit to say about maps, of course. I'm not going to try to make this a how-to video on how to use a map. Again, I'm just digging into some of my maps here, and I'm sort of weeding through some of the old ones and trying to pack together a pack that I could pick up and go with if I needed to. So let's dig in. First off, I always like to mention there's a lot of free resources out there. This brochure is from the U.S. Geological Survey. If your town has an office for the Geological Survey, and most towns do, at least most larger towns do, take a look. It's definitely a good resource. The people there are going to know what maps are in your area that are worthwhile, which ones are available, and which ones are out of date. And you're also going to find a lot of free materials like this. This one happens to be on finding your way with a map and compass. This one talks about understanding infrared photography, which is a lot of satellite imagery is done that way, so it helps you interpret it. We've got some things here, some free resources from the state. This one talks about a couple of the lakes where we like to go fishing, and having these maps available just jogs our memory in case we haven't been there in a while of what the access roads are like and which ones are the better ones to use for the parts of the lake we want to access. This one is a list of the different state parks in Arizona, so when planning a trip this kind of thing is handy to have. The other reason it's nice to have a nice resource like this from the state is that it marks things, like if it has a museum, if it has a picnic area, stuff you might be concerned about. Of course, there's contact information right away for every single state park here, so we'll leave something like this in a briefcase or in a bag in the back of the truck, especially when we go on a vacation. A couple of times we've gone hunting and decided that the hunting wasn't good, and we just decided to look around some of the state parks. Sometimes we've got snowed out of the unit that we were hunting in, so it's nice to have options, and maps are great resources for those options. Here's another one from the BLM, or actually this one's from the state, and this one talks about recreation and historic sites. Arizona's got definitely got some history, so this map shows some different locations of interest. And again, lots of information on the back as far as contact information, what sort of resources are available at the different locations. And again, we're talking almost no weight here, so I don't mind keeping this kind of stuff available. Even some of this basic stuff, all these type of skills are perishable, so having some of the basics clearly spelled out for you are handy to have around. Now this resource comes from Sunto, a compass maker. It opens like a map, but it's just full of information about how to use the map and basic orienteering skills. Lots of information is packed into here, and again, it's nice to keep it available. Let's say I'm going out with someone who's not real skilled on a map and compass, gives them something to read. It's broken down into into the basics for someone who's a novice, and it's good as a refresher. I like to keep, in Arizona at least, we've got lots of very little private land. It's mostly public land, either BLM, Forest Service, Indian Reservation, what have you. So a map like this one helps keep track of, again, where you might be and who owns the land you're at. It's especially when you're hunting, it's important to know who owns the land you're on. I got another one. This one's, I think, from the Forest Service, and it shows basically parks and stuff for the whole country. Now this isn't one I would take with me on a local trip, but I tell you what, when I take my cross-country trips, it's nice to know where the forests and things are, so that's a great map. I keep this little map. Again, another type of map is just a street map, and this one comes from a rental company, and it gives me, this particular one has a map of Phoenix and Tucson. We only really have two towns that are big in Arizona, and Phoenix and Tucson are those. So that map is just straight road map. It's all on one piece of paper. It's free. Really can't beat it. And one of the reasons I keep these around, I usually keep a couple in the truck. If I want to give directions to someone across town, this is the kind of map where I have no problems drawing it on here. It's simple enough to see the streets, the major streets in town. I can point them to wherever they need to go, and I can give them this map. It's real easy to replace, and what I like about the rental car places is there's usually not a lot of garbage on them. I've got another map here that comes from the city, and it's a city map, and it's very similar. It's just a Tucson map, but because it's from the Chamber of Commerce or someplace where they got a lot more interest than just telling you where to go. There's a lot of ads and garbage, but again, I keep something like this around because it is a fairly straightforward city map, and I don't mind letting that go. If I need to give it to someone, that's fine. So again, not to beat a dead horse, but I do keep some reference materials around. That one has to do with the symbols on a topographic map. I guess last up in that vein is I have a map of Nevada. You never know on a whim, you know, if we might decide to drive up to Las Vegas, and having a state map is just nice in case there's a road closure or something. I have to be detoured someplace I'm not used to. But that's not usually where I use my maps. I do have some road maps, but for the most part my maps, when I'm dealing with a map, I'm out in the woods and I'm either geocaching or hunting or just hiking around. And for that, I usually buy a map from the area I'm going to be in. This one is from the Forest Service, and I bought it off-site. In other words, I bought this at a map store in town. I paid a premium. It's $15. That's a little pricey for me. I'm cheap. I don't like paying for something that I can get for free. Used to be able to get this kind of stuff for free. That's not a possibility anymore, though. But it is sometimes cheaper to buy these on site. If there was a ranger station at the forest, then I could probably go there. Excuse me, I could probably go there and buy the map a little cheaper. This particular forest doesn't have a ranger station that I'm aware of, so I was sort of forced to buy it there. However, I probably could have bought it at the Geological Survey or the Geological Service office a little cheaper. So I like to keep maps like that. This one is another similar one. It's hard to see on the video. It's not quite a topographic map. It's a lot more like this first one we showed, where it's definitely a map of the area. It's got all the different roads and whatnot, but the big difference on this one is it's sort of the material like Write in the Rain notebooks are made on. It's a waterproof, I'd say water resistant. I don't want to say it'll last underwater, but it's not like it's plastic on the outside either. It's just heavy paper, sort of rubberized. It feels a little bit more like rubber than it does like paper, but you could still draw on it if you needed to. You could write on it. I don't write on my maps, but this one is again for another forest where we do some hunting, and I don't have the price on it, but I suspect it was probably a few bucks. Now that one, you know, I want to treat that one nice, and you'll see that I keep my maps folded correctly just so that they live longer. This one that I had folded, you know, for the area I go into, is folded on the, you know, on its own, on the new folds, and they've just started to rip apart like any piece of paper. Digging in a little bit more, another reference guide for elevations and distances. But even with all the stuff we've gone through here, we're barely talking about the size of a paperback book. Not a lot of stuff here. It all fit into one of my pouches so far. We got some road maps. Another thing I wanted to mention, though, as far as going off into the woods and whatnot, are a couple of things. One that we did one year while we were turkey hunting, and this is when color printers were first kind of available. This is a fairly old copy from a map, but it looks like a brand new map. What I liked about it, the reason I'm mentioning it, it was simple. I just took it to the copy place and made a color copy of the area we were going to be in. I didn't have to refold my map and deal with this kind of issue. It gives me one piece of paper to hold on to or to fold up, especially for a system like this where it's a small pack. I can fold this up to where we're going to be and have a pretty good idea while we're hiking, you know, of where we are. It's a topographic map, so I see all the elevations and whatnot. I see all the Forest Service roads, which is handy. But what I really like about it too is because it's a copy, I can just write on here, and we did. We wrote some of the places where we found turkey, and it lets us keep it. No reason to throw it away at the end of the hike of the camp, so we just kept that. Now I did the same concept when I was digging around town for some of the local dog parks where to walk my dog, and this is something that I wasn't sure exactly where they were, so I put them on Google. I printed out the map, and then there was a couple that I wasn't sure of, so I made a little bit larger scale version on the other side here. But again, once I found them, figure why throw away the piece of paper. It's easy enough to keep in my pack with the rest of my maps and whatnot, and you know, it's a resource for next time. We've got another photocopy of a similar situation where I went up to Phoenix, and this is just a real handy map. I really liked it because it showed me all the exits. A lot of times you get the street maps or the roads with the surface streets, but they don't tell you the exits on the highway, and I'm not familiar enough with Phoenix to know all those exits. And it's a little easier when you're going down the highway at top speed to see where an entrance or exit is than trying to figure out what road you're going to be going on. Anyway, so that's another option. You know, photocopying maps is a good idea. Next up, we've got These are some sort of handouts from the local Forest Service here. The mountain right above Tucson has quite a few trails on it, and that's what this is showing us, the road going up the mountain and all the various trailheads and the distances of the trails. I tell you, we get probably more use out of that map than we do out of the topographic maps of the area, just because it gives us the information that we need without a lot of extra information. And this one's very similar to it, just another area right next to Tucson with some of the trails. And even though it's not something you'd use to check your bearings and, you know, get an actual indication of where you are, it's great for when you're driving to know which trailhead to drive to, which parking area to go to. And when you're telling somebody back home where you're going to be, you don't have to give them a topographic map and hope they figure it out. You can just take a highlighter and show them with this or a copy of this. I guess last up, as far as outdoor stuff, I've got this National Geographic map, which has, I guess, Orion on it. But the reason I keep it is on the back, we've got a northern and southern hemisphere map of the skies. And when I'm out camping or hunting, and you know, a lot of your time is spent when it's dark out, these kind of maps are super nice to have around. Gives you something to see, lets you get an idea of, you know, what constellations you might be able to find out there. I think I'm going to turn it off at this point. This sort of dealt with the outdoor maps, and I'll make another video now that I see the video lasted a while, and I'll get into the street maps and driving maps. Before I turn it off though, I'm going to mention that there's a couple of resources here that I leave in the truck. They're a little too big for hiking for sure, but they're great resources, and I'm sure other states have them. This one happens to be for Arizona, of course, that's where I live. This first one is nothing but topographic maps. They take the state, they chop it up into these quadrants, and they give you a topographic map for each one. Just super handy, and I've used this a lot. It's a stapled binding, so the more you open it and hold it like this, it's going to wear out faster. This one retails for, I think, 16 bucks, 17 bucks. I got it significantly cheaper because I bought it a few years old at a used store. This next one is very similar, but instead of having just topographic maps, it has maps of public lands, the metro areas, in other words, street maps, camping and whatnot, and then some GPS information. So this one's more of a complete. It's got some basic topographic maps that don't have contour lines. They're more like photos, but again, to give you a bearing of where you might be compared to some hills. And then it's got street maps, which is great, and then it's got public lands, which again, when you're hunting or just rock hunting, it's nice to know what kind of, who owns the land you're sitting on. And then we've got information as far as the cities and whatnot. So this is a great one to keep in the car. I really like it as well because if I'm out somewhere and I need to get a phone number, and you don't have internet access, you've got a lot of phone numbers in this one. So this is a great one. Again, this one retailed for 20 bucks, and I got it significantly cheaper buying it used. So now I'll shut off the video. These are my outdoor maps, and I'll dig into some of my road maps and other maps that I keep in the vehicle. These would be the maps and the resources that I would take with me on a specific trip.